seriously, if you look at the food that we're eating today, right? People wonder why we're in this obesity epidemic, right? Just look at the food, right? The food is truly what is poisoning us, right?
No,
But if you go back to
I
that,
had a
to,
life like that, like where I was literally eating food. And even though I thought maybe even it was healthy, like it wasn't for me. Like my DNA is saying, hey, red meat, eggs, which I thought eggs were such a healthy protein. Man, it was literally killing me, you know?
What if I told you that the same mindset that builds championship teams also builds an extraordinary life? The same discipline that drives elite performance to greatness is the discipline that unlocks a longer, stronger, and more resilient future. This is where peak health meets peak performance, where we explore the science of longevity and the mindset of greatness. Because your legacy isn't just what you leave behind, it's what you show up with every single day. This is the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. I'm Zach Dancel, your host.
Welcome back to the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about what it means to glow through the dark, to turn pain into purpose and obedience into impact. Today's guest is Jessica Ernst, who is the host of Glow Talks with Jess, a podcast that amplifies purpose-driven stories and creates spaces for vulnerable, hope-filled conversations. Jess is a creative entrepreneur and mother who has turned her own story of healing into a mission to help others glow from the inside out. Jess, I'm so glad to have you. Obviously, we go way back. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Zach. It is an absolute pleasure to be on. And as a matter of fact, it's the first time I'm being interviewed on a podcast. So thanks for having me.
Oh, wow. That's so because you were when I was on your show, you were I was that was my first podcast, and just to kind of let the listeners know that the I've always wanted to do a podcast, um, but I never got that nudge to do it. But then when I was on your podcast, that's kind of where it was like, okay, like that
You
felt
can do
good.
it.
Like I can do this. And then we're here today. One of the very first few guests that we're gonna have on the show. So uh, thanks for being here and helping support this, as well as I want to make sure that we can get your message out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, it's starting the podcast wasn't necessarily like you know, uh, in my repertoire or like my thoughts even. And we can go into it more, but I have had lots of things happen recently and I kind of had to just I don't know, step out of my comfort zone in a sense and be like, "Okay, this is what I'm doing." So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, the
But I
the
loved
the
having you
comfort
on as a
zone.
guest and, also I love Nava. So as you mentioned, we've
Yeah.
known one another for years now. And part of that time was my work as a practitioner there in the
Yeah.
nutrition and counseling area. So I really enjoyed my time there with you guys.
No, I mean, obviously, you've had a passion for a pretty long time for health and wellness, right? We NABA was founded about 12 years ago. You were one of the early adopters and practitioners here at NABA. Um, I guess where did that whole start? Where did you going into becoming a nutrition expert, nutrition counseling? Where did you fall into that, and or how did you fall into that?
So originally, I had gone to school in business and I worked actually in real estate. So that's part of, what I'm doing now. But when I had kids and I was a stay-at-home mom, I struggled with my weight. I struggled with my health and, and also taking care of children. And that wasn't something that I like thought that again, my husband and I didn't necessarily like plan our first pregnancy. I think a lot of people are able to do that these days, but we were not in we were not like literally planning any of that. And I just didn't realize what an impact like having a baby and what my body was going through at the time. So I gained a lot of weight after having three kids. I had them all like kind of close together within 5 years. And I started kind of wanting to work from home and do something else than not just raising kids and that kind of thing, which was always a lovely experience. But I came into actually um, a lot of friends and groups at the gym, and I had lost weight. I was doing really well. I found this company where I could sell products basically from home, one of these like multi-level marketing. And that's how it initially started. I loved what I was doing. People were asking me all the time, like, what do you do? And how are you doing this? And you have 3 kids and all that. And I was like, yeah. Um, so I originally started in weight loss and wellness. I worked as a counselor or a weight loss coach for a few years, and that's when I came across the application for Nava. I saw it come across my
Yeah.
LinkedIn and I was like, oh, this looks really interesting. So I had become certified and gone back to school kind of to, be able to coach people, and it just worked out. So I have to give it to my kids and my husband, for kind of driving me into a place where I could be of service to others in the health and wellness field. I never really thought I was going to end up working in that. But then I was with Nava for probably, 5 years or so. Loved it. And I also, through the process of being a practitioner, not just a practitioner, but a patient, even then, I had gotten my initial labs done. Nava had so much training, and I was so blessed to know the doctors and nurses. So it was just a very fulfilling place for me in that time in my life.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
shortly after, I mean, I still was struggling with my own health, but it was slowly kind of coming back thanks to Nava, knowing about my food sensitivities, hormone deficiencies, and things like that. But my husband actually was diagnosed with melanoma cancer, and while I was working there, and I was just so thankful that I had all this training now and knowledge, and I had seen my own body kind of like heal itself over the years. Um,
Right.
so I think it was really influential also in his journey with, excuse me, with cancer, that over the years that he came in to Nava. He learned about his food sensitivities. Like he did the blood lab testing and stuff. And this was before he realized he was diagnosed. But no, it's been like, I don't know, full circle. Now I'm just a patient with you guys, which I love. And thank God. But yeah, like it was a definite like turning point in my life. After Rudy had been diagnosed, and then we were really trying to hone in and pay attention more to our bodies and our wellness overall, like holistically, not just what are these blood labs saying.
Yeah, because I mean, the biggest point and the biggest message when it comes to you know the legacy and longevity, right? Longevity, it's not a fairy tale, right? It is real and it can happen, but it has to happen with being intentional, right? Doing the right things. People say all the time that food is medicine, and people joke about it. They think that it's kind of woo woo, but no, seriously, if you look at the food that we're eating today, right? People wonder why we're in this obesity epidemic, right? Just look at the food, right? The food is truly what is poisoning us, right?
No, I
But if you go
like
back
I
to that
had a
to
life like that, like where I was literally eating food, and even though I thought maybe even it was healthy, like it wasn't for me. Like my DNA is saying, hey, red meat, eggs, which I thought eggs were such a healthy protein. Man, it was literally killing me. So eating away at my gut, like, and I was helping to then coach a whole bunch of people through the process of uh trying to repair the leaky gut and overgrowth of yeast, bacteria, and other things. And I
yeah,
mean, I went through it myself, so I felt for them, right? Like being sitting on the other side of being like, I know, like I had to go through this too. So
yeah,
people take it for granted, the food and
right,
what's really fueling us or not.
exactly, right, and you learn through the personal experience, right, of what happens when you're not being intentional with what we're putting into our mouth, right? It's input is output, right? And the output is going to be based off of what you're eating on a daily basis. The more processed foods, sugars, gluten or casein, if you have those sensitivities, the more that you're going to have a metabolic issue. And when you have that metabolic issue, then it's going to lead to inflammation, which inflammation then leads on to chronic disease, right? So you had to learn firsthand, and thankfully you learned quickly, and then you took your powers, right, and started giving back, right, and that's kind of where the legacy part comes in, right? So
To
I
have a
like
real
to ask.
impact, right?
Yeah, yeah. Now I like to ask the question because I think it's interesting to understand people's viewpoints of legacy, right? So in your own words, define legacy.
I mean, I see it as a way of being able to educate others to like make them help them to be better even than what we are today, right? Like, so I'm thinking about my kids and helping to educate them on all of this stuff, which now they're athletes. And before, when they were little kids and I kept saying Candida, they would literally make fun of me, but like, here we go. And now you're trying to perform on the field and whatever. Like, I'm glad that they can walk away and be like, actually, my mom, what she's saying was right. And now they can teach their kids and so on. And that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to start the podcast, was just a way to co-create with the world, and with God, and bring messages out to people that are healing, inspirational, that it will like make a little time tick right on their timeline of like, that was the day and the moment that I changed my life. You know, those things became very important to me. And I mean, that's why we're here, right? We're here, we're human, we need one another. I mean, hugs are, I think, the most healing thing on the planet that we can give one another, right?
Yeah.
But we're designed that way on purpose. So being able to like tap into that, um I think it's just very powerful and lasting and impactful. And that's what legacy means to me.
Yeah. No, I mean it's obviously there's can be a lot of different meanings, but that impact, right? You know, the the difference that you're making far beyond the years that we're here, right? When everything.
Even though I don't anymore like counsel folks in weight loss or gut healing, like, you better believe I literally email my own, documents out of the stuff I used. And even today, just email it out. If I have a conversation with them and they're like, oh, I'd really like to know, give me your email and I'll just send it to you. It's just trying to, I don't know, use like what I've learned and be able to help someone else with it. So maybe they don't have to struggle and go through all that nonsense that I had to go through after the fact. Like, I didn't even know what was going on with me until I walked into Nava, really, and just was really honing in on some of this stuff.
Yeah. So, the other day you shared that you went through, a season where everything collapsed, both personally and spiritually. Um, you know, Tell us a little bit, more about that, right? I'm assuming that's where Glow Talks, kind of was born, and why you founded that. So what was the turning point in that darkness for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say that, um, going through tragedy and loss, I mean, it was really crazy that uh, my husband had to pass so early. And, we had the three kids at the time. They were 12, 14, and going on 17. And I don't know, like, I felt like, yeah, I could just be a puddle on the floor. And there were many days that I was, and that was okay. I mean, that's part of the grieving process. But at a certain point, I was like, I'm not gonna sit around and like let my kids watch me like this. Number one. And then number two, like, I felt it was so interesting. And I was his main caregiver. I was there until his last breath and did everything possible we did everything possible to get him into clinical trials and the immunotherapy and all of this stuff. And just, unfortunately, it was just too aggressive. He had a
Yeah.
mutation, a genetic mutation. So it was just too aggressive and there was nothing we could do. And just, that was a turning point. Like, after he passed, I was like, now, like, I have to do it all. and like there's no time to like be weary and stuff. I mean, of course I grieved and did what I had to do and took therapy and things like that, but I realized right away the first call I made was to go get my hormone optimization and make sure that I could literally perform at a double time. So I was already doing the caregiving and raising the three kids and trying to manage, the expectations of the family and the medical stuff and all of it. And then now I was like, okay, I felt very called to like use this as a way to, um, I don't know, I guess just as a way to help others. Like I was like, no, I just don't want to sit back and do nothing. And like, what if these other families who have, family members with melanoma? I was like very much interested in raising money for Johns Hopkins, and I really love our oncologists, and still work with them and see them often. But the podcast was like a way that I could connect it all. It was a way that I could
Right.
like easily put things down in real life and that it would be available forever, you know? Um, so it was scary to me to start it. And I was very unsure about how to like structure and whatever, but I luckily found some good teams to help me, wonderful teams. Um, and takes a lot of people and a lot of help, but like we get it done.
Exactly. You said one of your first calls was to call Nava to, get your work up, get your hormones balanced, right? And it's I kind of think of it like, I like to use the analogy of, when you're on an airplane and they're basically saying if the uh, oxygen mask drops down, put yours on first, right? It's true, right? Because if we don't take care of ourselves first, right, how are we supposed to take care of others?
I mean, I knew that I was like already in a shocked kind of situation just because he passed so quickly, it seemed. I mean, we knew he was diagnosed all those years before, but the immunotherapy worked. We were using nutrition and balancing, nutrients and healthy lifestyle and those type of things. But then when it came this all of a sudden, it was like I was left in almost a state of shock. And like I knew that in order for me to be able to really be there for my kids or myself, to be honest, or his family and all the other people who were, very much a part of our lives and counting on us over the years, like I had to really like do that, put the oxygen mask on. And I was like, the only way I'm going to do this is if I get myself back in order, which I hadn't had time. I didn't pay attention to myself. I was busy caregiving for everybody else, you know? So I'm very, I have just a very special place in my heart for people who are really suffering and struggling and have stress and stressful lives, and things happen like we don't expect it, and nor is it fair or whatever. But the best thing we can do is literally turn all of that around and just try to bring ourselves to a balanced state so that we can do more, right, for ourselves and our lives and the people around us that we love. So that was really important to me.
Yeah. And so, I guess when you're in that state, and other people, when they're going through that, guess what would you say to them, who right now is in that breaking, who's in that season?
I mean, I really believe that, you can do things little by little. Like I would say, one step at a time. So it started with me going to get my pellet and my hormone balancing. And then I started looking more at the updates of the labs of like, okay, my immune system is kind of having a hard time. So I looked at the ozone therapy and I made that appointment. Um, then I was like, okay, I can kind of hone in a little bit more on my eating now that I have time trying to cook and all of these other things like more healthy meals versus ordering DoorDash or running. The only meal I'd have is like a Starbucks. Uh, which I know we all find ourselves in that state, but just start small, one thing at a time, I do feel that paying attention to the food sensitivities helped me because then a lot of my symptoms were more like mental. So I'd have anxiety, mood swings, depression, food cravings, and things like that. And we don't really realize it, but those symptoms are actually just telling us that there's something else like not in balance. not just like
Yeah.
that there's something wrong with us or that like we need to now just go to see a therapist and take pills to help our mental state. Like those are just a band-aid. It's not a real solution to, making yourself feel better.
Yeah, it's the hamster wheel, the pharmaceutical hamster wheel where it's disease management.
So luckily I knew I had been in that state of mind before and I knew and I had a lot of patients that I had seen also make like full transformations. Um, so I feel lucky in that sense, but if I could urge whoever's watching this today, if you feel like you're in a wheel, and that you're waking up anxious or you're constantly depressed or like you don't find that you have enough energy to even like be inspired to change, like, seek something out. Just even going out for a walk or drinking more water every day. Simple little solutions one by one, it does help our body.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds like, you had this sense of connection and understanding before, Rudy's death. But it sounds like since then you've been a little bit more intentional about paying attention, right? About the whole mind body connection.
Yeah. And I feel that's the only way I can really perform at my top level is to, I mean, mark out my days and schedule things on purpose, like leave blocks and leave actual full days of going to doctor appointments, maybe getting a massage, acupuncture. Those things are all very helpful for how grounded I feel and how stable I feel, throughout my weeks. So I have to like literally mark that time off and like try not to move it or do anything with it, like actually follow through with some of that. And it's tough. I mean, I've just got the three kids and the dog and the business and, I love my clients. I do a lot of other philanthropy in the community. And though I really enjoy all of that, like I do have to do my other full-time job, which is taking care of myself. you
Yeah.
know?
No, of course. No, you've been pretty open about your health journey, with battling Candida, to
I lost my
more recently
gallbladder.
to more recently the mold exposure, right?
Oh gosh, yeah. So unfortunately, yeah, and being a realtor, like that's a big one, right? If I'm looking at homes, buying and selling and advocating for my clients, like living in a home that has mold is really uh oh gosh, that is really life changing and not in a great way. I'm not gonna lie. Like even my son was sick like all winter it seemed he just kept getting hit like virus after virus after virus. And I realized too that it was harder for me to control my own candida because the mold was all just around me. So my immune system is like low. Stress doesn't help, right? Not getting enough sleep. Like I noticed, and I even had an air purifier in my room, like where it would just constantly like a hospital grade one. But no, like if you have mold exposure in your home, it's really, really a hit on your body and your immune system. So definitely, I would say, make sure if you think you have something like that going on to get it checked out, and even more so, advocate for your own self of like keeping your body lower with inflammation, low inflammation, lots of water, cleanses, which detox from mold is not fun.
Yeah, what can people do to get testing for their house, and have remediation, because obviously you being a realtor, like how frequent do you see mold?
There are companies that will come out and test for it and they'll just swab and they'll know like which different molds are growing. And I believe there are companies that will send you a kit. So the home that I was like renting because it wasn't my own, the homeowner was doing everything that they could to, you know, figure it all out, which was great. But it just, yeah, you should test for it. And you can just search it up online. I don't have like the names of those companies, but there are a bunch.
Yeah, and so when you started experiencing some of the health changes when you were in an apartment that had mold, walk us through that about how it changed the way you thought about health, what you did to, proactively, help with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much you can do if it's, a rental, right? I mean, definitely reach out if you're in a multi-unit building, reach out to your manager and all of that, but you can definitely reduce, like, for instance, dampness in the home. You can put those little Arm& Hammer where they absorb moisture. Dehumidifiers are really important, and especially in the areas that you might collect more dampness, like in the HVAC rooms, mechanical rooms, especially if you've got like hot and cold. So in Virginia, we have, and in Florida, same thing. It's just very humid.
Yeah,
So running those
yeah,
dehumidifiers is very important, and it works. Um, just sometimes it's kind of, you can even buy them where they have the hose and run it out the side of a garage or a back door, so you don't have to constantly empty the bucket.
yeah. What were some of the symptoms that you were personally feeling health wise?
I definitely had well, when I have higher Candida, I can tell that my skin, I get rashes, I have more food cravings, and then I have more, like I said, like mental strife. So mood swings, anxiety, actually. And then I would get very achy, like some achy joints. So that's something else that I've experienced when I have a lot of mold, but more so also like irregular cycles. Yeah. The food cravings are the hardest, especially if you're, wanting to stay at a healthy weight. And then, or at night, you're like wanting to go to the pantry. And I remember some of my nutrition books when I was getting my certifications were saying this nighttime eating disorder where you get like really hungry all of a sudden right before bed. It's not nighttime eating disorder. Like it's candida that needs to continue to grow while you're sleeping. So, and I just didn't know any of this stuff. I had no idea. Itchy eyes, itchy skin, I'd get little rashes like around my nail beds, or fungus, like my kids get like foot fungus or things like that. Athlete's foot that doesn't go away. Those are all signs that you've got something in overgrowth in your gut, which your gut's made to hold all these gross things inside, right? Like that's the whole purpose. But then when it starts getting grown over, it becomes its own entity in there, kind of thing. And so that's what's driving those cravings. And like, oh, you walk by the table of the kids' cupcakes and you're like, oh, I gotta have, just let me have a taste of this, let me have a taste of that. Once I detoxed, I was using herbs and food primarily for the detox from it. I could walk by that stuff all day long and I would not, I'd be like, no, that's the kids' food. Like I don't, I didn't even want it. I was so just like, oh. So it was so different to see myself like night and day in those mind states. Um, though detox isn't fun, I would highly recommend, if you have all these like weird symptoms and you can't really put your finger on it, it's typically something that's going on in your gut that you don't know about.
Yeah. No, and obviously there, especially with, functional medicine, longevity medicine being around, there's so many tools in our toolbox now that we have access to.
So I used the IVs because I wasn't getting enough nutrients, and your body needs nutrients in order to detox as well, even though you shouldn't be maybe too active during low calorie diets or certain like food cleanses. The the IVs are great. And then recently I had started using that ozone therapy because I was still having some like issues. And with the food sensitivities as well, I noticed that after I'd done the ozone therapy, I think I had 3 or 4 sessions, like, I felt so much better, so much better. My food sensitivities actually, like, if I have something or another, if it's in my food, I don't get as reactive. Um, I was sleeping better, and that actually was something I used for the mold. Once I really realized that it was just very moldy and whatever, I started doing those treatments, and it helped me quite a bit. Um
Yeah. No, I mean, there's some very powerful treatments that are on the cusp of people are starting to come around to, but functional medicine has used it for a very long time. They've seen the power, they've seen the benefits. Things services like stem cell IVs, right? Plasmapheresis, but then also, ozone therapy, right? Ozone therapy, just so everyone knows, basically O3 versus O2, right? O3 means that there's an additional atom attached to it. So basically, it's a supercharged oxygen, right? To where it has three atoms instead of two. But it your body need the more oxygen that your body has, right? The better it can do with healing and detoxing, right? So having that extra oxygen is going to help with more energy. It's going to help with immune system to wake up and fight that inflammation or the mold that you have up and help clean up that waste and the toxins that you know toxicity is such a common thing today, right? It's everywhere, right? It's the plastics, it's the cookware, the seed oils, right? So it's you know we can do the best that we can to try to be as clean as possible, right? But there it's going to be so hard to be perfect,
No,
right?
and it's this modern day. It's just, our bodies weren't designed to take on from the air, the plastics, like you said, even the fabrics and what's in our food for crying out loud. I mean, the box, anything in a box or whatever that's like pre-packaged, like it's got stuff in it, unless you really read that label, which I highly recommend, and just make sure it's like the minimal ingredients. And look, I mean, this is reality. Like, we don't have a lot of time and we're busy and all of that stuff. So I get it. But um, yeah, you've got to try other methods of detox. It's not just anymore possible to be like, oh, I'm just eating fruits and vegetables and I'll be good.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's looking at the full picture, right? It's doing all the things, all the right things. It's what we eat, it's what we put in our body, our movement, our sleep, our how we're meditating, how we're managing our stress levels. That's overall going to play that factor into your health.
Yeah, but the ozone therapy was so crucial for me. And I didn't even actually realize what I was coming in to do. I was like, oh, yeah, ozone therapy, that sounds great. And then, what was so cool was that it's like so natural. Like, I didn't feel
Oh,
it
yeah,
was,
no,
you're not putting anything else but just the cleansed blood, your own cleansed blood. You're just putting it back into your body. And then your blood's like, oh, look at this nice, shiny, clean blood. Let's try to mimic that. That looks really good.
right. Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting to see the dark blood coming out and how much lighter it is going back in. After it goes through the UV light, it gets infused with the O3, back through the UV light and back in. I mean, it's like an oil change, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's essentially what's
We did a
happening.
vlog on it. So if you guys are interested, whoever's listening, you can go to the Glow Talks with Jess on YouTube. And there is a video of like the whole process while we were there that day. I brought my media crew because
Oh
I was
yeah,
like, people need to see this.
that would be perfect. That would be perfect. What would you say? Like, what was the most notable shift in your body and energy after doing those?
Okay, so I noticed after the first session, I did feel detoxy, like a little bit of headache, just feeling tired. And it wasn't until day 3. It was like day 3, I was like, whoa, actually something's happening. But then after the third session, the fourth session, I didn't feel that way at all. I actually slept better. And then I felt like I had way more energy. I just felt lighter. I don't know how to explain that, but just mentally, even the load wasn't as heavy. I'm like, yeah, I got nothing changed with my situation. I still got a lot of situation to deal with, but like at least my mood was like, okay, I didn't feel so overwhelmed. And I will say the same thing about the hormone therapy. That was the number one thing that I noticed was that I didn't feel as overwhelmed. And again, my food sensitivities weren't as like symptomatic, like my body's immune system could deal with it, a little better.
Yeah. No, I mean that's you know hormone therapy, right? It's gotten such a bad rap over the years. Especially back a little bit over 20 years ago with the Women's Health Initiative. Where this outdated science was just wrong, right? Which we're here today where it's just been proven misleading. It's not accurate and it's deprived women specifically of such a powerful treatment.
Well, and think about it, like, now all of a sudden women are starting their periods earlier, which it wasn't common, like, if we look at 100 years ago, right? And then even going into the menopausal, which I saw your post about that, like, into those years, that's happening and shifting younger and younger. And then we're just, like, being like, "What's happening to me? Like, what's wrong with me?" We're so disconnected, where I think some of this research and new knowledge of women's hormones and balancing, like, again, like, something that really needs to be, put out there, and people need to be educated on it so they can make their own decision of what they want to do with their bodies.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's all about education. It's part of the reason why you have your platform, part of the reason why we have our platform. It's all about education, right? We're not here to make any decisions for anybody. It's just giving them the information, right? It's giving them the data.
Well, and then access to solutions, right? Because if there's no, like, everyone can be like, "Oh, this is what's happening." Okay, well then what can we actually do about it now, right? Which I loved Nava for that. Like, all throughout my years there, and you guys were always innovating and adding new services and looking into how we can better help ourselves. Like, I love that. I love that. And I was always like, "I'll be the guinea pig. I'll try it, no problem."
Yeah, and what's awesome about you know Nava, longevity medicine, functional medicine is that it's not just for, you know, a select group of people, right? It's not just for celebrities. It's just not for people who have money. It's not just for people who are sick. Um, it is for everybody, right? And that's part of like the big message that, that I really want to help to spread is that, for me, I want to be here as long as possible and as present as possible. Right now that I have a family of my own, my wife, my kids, my wolf pack, right? Like there's nothing that I wouldn't do myself,
Right.
to make sure that my life an enjoyable life, right? I don't wanna be, debilitated, and sick and have disease, right? I wanna live the longest, healthiest life so that I can experience as much as possible with them, right? So that I can be here with them, and then I can help them, grow and see their later years in life, and that when something bad happens, when they go through one of their dark seasons, right, that I'm able to be there for
Yeah.
them, right,
Yeah.
and that's really the big thing, right? This is for everybody. If you, it's about being proactive. It's about being preventative. We know that 80 to 90% of those chronic diseases that are plaguing our nation right now can be prevented, right? But it starts with putting in the work,
Yeah.
right?
And being
Putting the work
consistent, right?
of educating yourself, right? Of the do's and don'ts, the importance of sleep, right? The importance of what we're putting into our bodies, the importance of, you know, how stress is, impacting us, right?
And our mental space, right?
Yeah, and it's one of the things that, just coming from football, I feel like I've built up just such this high tolerance and resilience of stress that sometimes I'm not really aware if I'm stressed or not. So I kind of do have to step back and kind of think, is this really that important, right? Is this going to, how is this going to impact me? And make smart decisions from there. But it's about being present. It's about knowing what's going on with your body, that mind body connection, right? But also, it's no longer, an annual physical is no longer enough,
No.
right? You know, there is so much that can happen within a year, within your lab markers. I mean, cancer can happen, right? Cancer can come on. So if you're not consistently being, tested, to see what your markers are, whether it is a place like Nava Health or, your doctor's office or one of these, testing companies online, right? It's important to get that done.
I know it's scary. Like, I know people too who are just like, I don't want to know. But like, they would rather just skip it. But this is where the obedience you were talking about comes in, you
Yeah,
know? And
exactly.
being able to do things scared is like part of the human experience. Like that is how you're pushing through and actually getting to the other side of things and then able to then, live a long and prosperous life, right? We have to do the scary things. And guess what? Like, yes, your health is your wealth. Like, if you're not healthy, like you said, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're not supporting anyone. So,
No, all of that, right? Food is medicine, health is wealth. If you don't have health, there's what do what do you have, right? You're going to be debilitated. You're going to live a miserable life, and that's not a life worth living, right? We can have all the problems, but until you get sick, then you have one problem, and you experienced it with Rudy firsthand.
it was really hard to watch that, and he did everything really that he could to keep himself like in a good balanced state. And I mean, honestly, we didn't even step foot in the hospital until 7 days before he passed. Like where we were checking in to be like something's really happening. We knew what was happening, but he was really able till just about 7 days prior like to live a full experience, like you said, even despite the cancer. I just was so proud of him, and I know he was just so strong and wanted our kids to see that he was never going to give up, even if they said it's 10% chance you're making it. Like he was like, okay, well, order me some vegetarian pho and soup, and like let's get on with our day, I'm like, okay. He'd be out in this pool swimming, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, don't hurt yourself, But I really just was so proud of him, honestly. Watching that was really tough, but he was dedicated, and I'd much rather be like him, like just fight till the very end. We owe it to ourselves.
No, we owe it to ourselves, and then also, when you have your why, right? Like your family, why wouldn't you do everything possible um, to be here as long as possible, for them, with them.
Well, and even people who don't, for instance, have kids, like it's their purpose, right? For their profession or helping the world, like having an impact on their communities, maybe being caretakers for others. Like those are all God-given life purposes, And we're going to feel better being able to fulfill those and in, like you said, the best of our physical and mental ability, and just not like checking out and just being like, oh, well. And I felt that, like, I've actually lived that, like, what do I want to say, like a timeline where prior to me knowing what was really going on in my body, yeah, I was not living in a very mentally present or full state, abundant mindset. Like, it's so important. And the health, it does start here. Like, it starts with our cells, it starts with our gut, it starts in our, nervous system. So, um, do a little research, see what you're comfortable with, you know what I mean? Start small, drink more water every day, I got that Aura ring to see how my sleep was. Um, I tried the oxygen therapy and I was like, wow, actually this is doing something, you know?
Yeah, so now that you're doing the Aura ring, you're doing you're getting your hormones, you're doing regular IVs. What would you say are what would you say are some non-negotiables when it comes to your health?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would say, like I mentioned before, putting boundaries in your schedule. And I know, sure, you have a 9 to 5 and whatever, but then guess what? Like, wake up an extra hour early. And even if you don't go do a workout, like lay in your bed and stretch and do breathing. Like, I think the breathing and the intentional, like coming back into your body and mind, especially in the morning, like those are really essential for me anyway, to be able to then go out in the world and be really present and be very intentional about like what I'm spending my energy on. So that's number one. The sleeping, I mean, that's obvious. And then hydration. I just think your body needs to be hydrated consistently in order for it to like trust you again. So that's like that building of the trust and the obedience and whatever. Not that we're like a slave to our bodies, but the older I get, I'm like, I want to feel good. right? I want to be able to be an asset to my community and my work and my world. Um, and I wouldn't be happy with myself if I wasn't able to show up in that way consistently, you know?
Right. How do you, how you mentioned this a lot about, listening to your body, right? As a busy mom, entrepreneur, you got the podcast, you got your real estate business, you know, how do you fully, how are you able to listen to your body when it's asking, is it time to rest or do you need to keep going?
So, I mean, I have a very strong faith and spiritual practice, the breathing, prayer time, in the mornings and the evenings. I think that I've been now through the ringer physically, so I can tell when my body's like angry at me, and I have to just forgive myself. So, going to the faith part and just being able to first forgive whatever I have done to my own body, you know? And I talk to my body, like, when I'm showering, like, "Thank you, feet, for being able to do dance practice today, I really appreciate that." But, like, these are little practices that I have found over time. It's, like, helping me to my body to trust me again because I had put myself through the ringer. I'd gotten really sick and felt terrible, and I was able to see myself come out of it. So now, like, when I start seeing things happening that I'm not like super happy about, I'm like, okay, Jess, just it's okay. You didn't mean to do this to yourself, so I forgive a lot mentally. Like,
Forgive.
hmm
Yeah.
and I feel like it's just a spiritual thing. Like, you'll find over time once you do those little stuff every day and like clap for yourself, like be your own cheerleader, that
Yeah. I love that.
you didn't eat dairy today. You know what? Awesome. That's a win, right? I think little things like that, it just goes a long way. And it does help reconnect like that mind body pathway so we can continue to do it. Like we can continue and be incentivized, to keep going.
So, Jess, one of the things that I like to do to close out each episode is ask them the same question. When it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be?
Really, if I can be the conduit to another person to have that impact where it changed their lives in a positive way, left it better than when I found it, whether it's a home or a person or a place. Um, I would say that is my ultimate legacy.
Yeah. No, that's it's powerful. I think that's what this whole show is about. I think that's obviously what you're trying to do. With your show, we're building something, and we've built something that's gonna outlive us. Not just within the podcast, but as examples of um, through the other side of pain, right? What that lies the glory, right? That storms will come and go. Seasons. Obviously, we go through different seasons for a reason. And even through our toughest season, right? You found your way back and showed up, and now you're leaving that impact to make a change and helping others. So I think that's very powerful, and you know, just like what we're doing at Nava, what you're doing is just as important. So I appreciate you for being here. Obviously, to if today's episode spoke to the listeners, hopefully they'll share it, they'll send it to a friend, their spouses, someone who's walking through that hard season, that we've all gone through at some point in our life, because legacy isn't just meant to be built alone. We it's meant to be lived together. So Jess, thanks for being here. I appreciate you, and not just as being a guest on my show, but as being a friend.
Thank you, Zach. It's been just a pleasure and a wonderful ride. I'm excited for, more fun times ahead.
If today's conversation sparked something in you, here's what I want you to do right now. Pick one strategy, one insight, one small action you heard today, and commit to it this week. Excellence isn't built in moments. It's built in the daily decisions that compound over time. Remember, you're not just building a healthier body or a more successful career. You're building a legacy that will outlast you. And that starts with the standards you set today. Thanks for listening to the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. If this episode was valuable, first subscribe so you never miss an episode. Then leave us a review to help more people find these conversations. And finally, share it with someone who you think needs to hear it. Until next Tuesday, keep raising the bar, keep pushing your limits, and keep stacking days. I'm Zach Dancel. Your legacy starts now.